Holy moly, I am coming back from Florida, a senior medium 4 D2 summit champion, and I still kind of can't believe it. The 2 years that we did not make finals were years that I was constantly chasing the score sheet and constantly changing their routine, and it never gave them the opportunity to master it. Last year, we got second, and it wasn't close. Like, Titanium Force beat us by a lot. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Cheer Biz Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Cotton, and today we are talking about the fact that, holy bleep, my team won D2 Summit. Now, before we get into the episode, please head on over to Cheer Gym Owners on Facebook, as well as All-Star Cheer Coaches and Owners, and make sure you are in that group or those groups. And if you are interested in learning more about how you can grow your business or become a better coach or achieve more in your gym, you've got to get registered for our conference June 20th through the 22nd in Dallas, Texas. It is going to be absolutely phenomenal. The spots are starting to fill up. We had a little bit of a slow kickoff, but now that people have seen all the speakers and all the classes and the end of season events are done, spots are filling up fast. And I don't want you to miss it if you're a gym owner or a coach who wants to make sure you're there. So make sure you join us for the best conference in the country this summer, June 20th through the 22nd of 2025 in Dallas, Texas. Now, let's get into the episode. So as I said, holy moly, I am coming back from Florida, a senior medium 4 D2 summit champion, and I still kind of can't believe it. It was a close division. It could have gone either way. It happened to go our way. And I have a bunch of different things that I kind of want to dive into now that I've come down a little bit from that initial excitement and initial high. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of our story and kind of why this is such a big deal to me and to my gym. So first off, this is our first D2 Summit win. This is the first time we've ever won D2 Summit. So we've won NCA one time with one of our teams. We've won Cheer Sport with one of our teams. And this is our first D2 Summit win. It's the biggest win of my coaching career, and not because of necessarily just because it's D2 Summit, but it has been the unattainable goal. And now I'm like, okay, next up, let's go win Worlds. And I've never had the mindset of like, I can actually go win Worlds. So the first thing is just giving you a little bit of background. So my senior medium 4 has been competing in the senior medium all girl division for 7 years. We are actually the only team that competed in that division this year that has been competing in that division. The same team, obviously different girls because it's been 7 years, but the same team for the last 7 years has been competing in senior medium 4. And we have placed a variety of different placements from 6th to 3rd to 2nd to not making finals for a couple years to placing 2nd last year. So we've had a variety of placements, but we've always been in the mix, always been very competitive, and we've just never been able to attain the goal of winning. And it's something that my athletes on that team have all been striving for years. We've come close, we've tasted that with the 2nd place. The very first year we got 2nd place, we were in first, tied for first going into day 2 with Titanium Force. And then we had a stunt fall and we fell to 2nd place. And then the next 2 years after that, we did not make finals. And that the first year we didn't make finals was like, it was a gut punch beyond gut punches because we thought we were going to be in the mix to win. And then the next year we didn't make finals. And it was because we had a big fall in our pyramid. I think we would have made it otherwise. But our score showed that we probably wouldn't have been in the running to win, which I thought was kind of crazy. And so we really drilled down and we focused on our culture. We focused on a lot of things, came back, got 2nd. But last year we got 2nd and it wasn't close. Like Titanium Force beat us by a lot. And then this year we had it from the beginning of the season. The girls were all in on trying to win. And we knew we had a really difficult task because Titanium Force is quite literally that. They are a force in the D2 division. If you've never watched them across their levels, they are phenomenal. They had a junior 4 that won. So their senior medium 4 got second to us by 0.06. So like it wasn't like they got beat. They could have won that event, and it just came down to very marginal things from the judges' perspective. And we honestly, what it came down to, for those who don't see all the breakdowns, it was only because we scored higher than them in basket execution on day 2. That was it. Otherwise, we were the same across the board, and they beat us out in performance. Otherwise, our scores were literally identical, except for our basket toss execution, which our basket toss execution was something we really focused on. So it was an incredibly close division, and that team is so talented. And that's part of what made it so much more dramatic, made it such a bigger win, is because Titanium Force has been winning it. Like, year over year over year. The only years that I don't think they won were the years that they competed level 5. They didn't win our division because they weren't in it. It's pretty wild how many times that they've won D2 Summit Senior Medium 4, and they are phenomenal people. Their owner is an amazing person. The kids were definitely disappointed, but they were totally respectful. Like, they were sad that they didn't win, but there was no like animosity. They were very respectful backstage. A few of them even said congratulations to us, and that was wonderful. So all of that was really great, but it was the biggest win because of that. I'm just so grateful. If you saw me on stage, it was fairly dramatic. You know, I definitely was, I was in the moment with my athletes, and seeing their faces. You know, we were prepared to not win. We mentally went in and said, hey, look, our goal is to podium. We put out a great routine. We actually didn't feel it was the best routine we could have done. We knew that there were a few little areas where we could have done better. We know we could have had better execution in our elite section, in our stunts. We knew that our jump score didn't go up, but the jump judge was being very, very difficult. We knew that we could have done a few things a little bit better, and it was noted on our score sheet. So the judges agreed. And so we felt like we'd put out 2 great routines. We hit 2 zeros. First time we've hit 2 zeros in a long time, but we weren't sure what was going to happen. So that shock of knowing, of hearing our name not get announced in second place, knowing that our name was going to be announced in first, was a true moment. And that was a very real reaction. And for some of those kids, you know, they've been on that team for 4 years, and, you know, they were on the teams that didn't make finals, got second, and then they finally got the win. So it's pretty cool. Anyways, I'm not going to belabor that, but I think there are some really big takeaways from this weekend as I've thought about it, and some things that I want to touch on as I come out of, you know, what am I thinking about now that we're like summit champions? Number one is, I think one of the biggest difference makers of this team is a couple things. So the 2 or 3 things that I think that really contributed to us being able to win. Number one was, this team was placed very competitively in terms of everyone was leveled very appropriately. Number 2 is, we were all in and all together on our goal of trying to win D2 Summit. And they had set themselves a goal to be undefeated, and then they were not. And that rocked them a little bit. But that, I think, was one of the best things for them this season, because it kept them hungry. And then number 3 was, we made very few changes to our routine throughout the season. The changes we made were micro changes. The 2 years that we did not make finals were years that I was constantly chasing the score sheet and constantly changing the routine. And this judge said this, so we're going to change that. And this judge said this, so we're going to change that. And it never gave them the opportunity to master it. But from the time that we got our choreography from Luke Johnson, who did an amazing job, we adjusted our elites, our stunts, and our pyramid pretty significantly, because I'm a pyramid butthead and I always like to do my own pyramid. So I ended up doing my own pyramid on that one. But otherwise, we did not change the routine. Once we had all that set, we did not change the routine hardly at all. We added in like a little transition. There was a little while where we played with a dismount, but then we ended up taking it out because it wasn't clean enough. And so we just kept the same routine and drilled it very, very consistently. And I think that is what allowed us to achieve what we did and be able to go out there and hit 2 amazing 0 deduction routines. So that was one of my big takeaways of like, what was the difference? Placing the team competitively, the kids being all in and fully invested from the very beginning, and then coaches staying the course and keeping the routine together as much as humanly possible, only making changes when required. And that's not to say we never changed anything. It's not to say that personnel didn't change. I mean, quite frankly, we had a personnel change the week before we left Summit. We put an alternate in a position because someone was injured and not landing their tumbling consistently. And it wasn't wasn't good for their body to keep throwing it. So we made those changes all the way up to and through it. And I think that those are really my big takeaways. The next thing I want to kind of touch on, or I've been thinking a lot about, is I've always said over the years that it's hard to retain after you win. And I don't know that that's necessarily true. We had just won and kids were already talking about next season, already talking about, being motivated to go do it again. Now, obviously, if you win and win and win and win and win, it's a little less motivating. But when you win, especially when you win by the skin of your teeth, you're still hungry. You still have something to prove, or at least my athletes have. And I think it's partially because of the culture that we built. Now, on the flip side, I think there is something on a negative. There's something negative that we potentially built in these athletes and building the competitive aspect. And I'm not sure how we handle this in the cheer industry, but we're so focused on perfection. And I have been so hard on this team about, we have to be perfect, and saying, I've said to them no less than a dozen times, if you guys want to beat Titanium, who is amazing, you have to be perfect. You cannot leave any excuses. You have to be absolutely perfect. I ended up being wrong. I said, if you get a 1.7 on your jumps, there's no way you win Summit. Now, granted, the highest score was a 1.7 in execution, so it ended up working out. But historically, normally that would be the case. The problem with this is, and why I'm bringing this up as an issue, is my athletes came off the mat on day 2 and we hit 0. We hit 0, and I knew we'd hit 0. Like, there were a few little issues here and there, and they were mad. Like, we went out to our parents and they were not celebrating. They were not excited. They weren't jumping for joy. They weren't like, yes, we did it, because they'd all kind of seen a few little issues on video and they'd talked about them. And it was suddenly not, we put out an amazing routine. It was, we didn't put out the perfect routine. And we know that if we don't put out a perfect routine, that our competitors are likely going to put out a competitive routine. And they did not celebrate. Like, they quite literally, they weren't crying, but they looked like they messed up. Like, when they went out to their parents, like, everyone was like, what's wrong? Like, why are they so unhappy? I had kids that were still unhappy after we'd won, because they knew that they hadn't done it perfect enough. And that is something highly concerning to me, because that is, how do you strike that balance? How do you get kids to strive for that perfection and value it and know how important it is, because it is what is important to potentially win, while also allowing them to know that they're human beings, and putting out the perfect routine is almost nearly impossible. And there's no reason to sit around and sulk and feel like you did a horrible job when you're one of the best teams in the country in your division. Like, wow, that's freaking amazing. And it's something that I don't have the answer to, but it's something that I think we as an industry need to look at in how we train athletes to achieve perfection without imprinting on them perfectionist ideals that are unattainable and unrealistic, that are set to make them not enjoy moments that they should be enjoying. Like, the fact that I have kids that I don't know if they truly enjoyed that win as much as they would have if they hadn't been like, well, but I still messed up. Like, I actually had an athlete say that, like, yeah, we won, but I still didn't hit a perfect routine. Who cares? Like, it's the reality. It's how they're thinking, and they're teenagers. And so how do we navigate that as an industry? So that was something that was definitely on my mind. Another thing very much on my mind is, and I know that this may sound kind of crazy, but I was not a big fan of the scoring. I was pretty frustrated. There was one judge, the tumbling and jumps judge, who the ranges were just very, very tight. Almost everyone got the same standing tumbling score in execution. Running tumbling scores were not very different. Everyone got, the highest score anyone got was a 1.7 in jumps. And I will tell you, a 1.7 is the lowest score my team has scored in jump execution all season long. And I'm pretty sure it's the lowest score Titanium Force scored all season long, because both of our teams have really good jumps. Do I think the result would have been different if they'd scored differently? I don't know. I don't think it should have been as tight as it was, personally. I think that judge could have used the range a little bit stronger on running tumbling and standing tumbling, because I think there was a wide discrepancy between some of the teams that basically had the same scores in execution. And my issue with that is when the ranges are not fully used, it can lead to improper placements. Now, I'm not saying that there were improper placements. It was very, very close. Like I said, I'm not saying that there was an improper placement, because it wasn't that. it was just, I think that judging was really, really tough. And that brings me to my second point, just overall with D2 Summit. Scores were really low. Like across the board, scores were very, very low in multiple halls. Teams that had been scoring 98s, high 98s up to 99s this season were scoring 96s and 95s. And I understand the score sheet enough to know that you can certainly execute your way out of that score. But teams that had really good performances were scoring much lower than they had historically scored. And I found that a little bit concerning. Do I have the answer? No. These are just my thoughts coming off of the weekend. The next thought I had is something that kind of happened after the win, which is we need to remember as an industry, and we need to demonstrate as an industry, that these are kids constantly having to have a bad guy, good guy. I didn't love that. Was I super excited to beat Titanium Force? Yes, I was. The owner of Titanium Force, I would consider a good friend. We've talked many times over the years, and she's been there for me when I've been disappointed. We have a good relationship, and there was no animosity. In fact, she was so genuinely happy for me as her friend to win. She came over and spoke to our kids and said, yeah, I'm so proud of you guys, and you absolutely deserve this, and like, great job, and thank you for being a class act. Like she was a class act in it. To see social media talking about how, they had poor sportsmanship, or because they didn't react a certain way when they heard their name announced in second place, I didn't view what they did as poor sportsmanship at all. Like, to tell an athlete that to look shocked is poor sportsmanship is wild to me. It's not like they stood up and stormed off. They didn't take their banner and throw it on the ground and stomp on it. They didn't start yelling and screaming at anyone. They were just shocked. They were just kind of, whoa, what just happened? You can say, well, maybe they were too cocky. I'm not saying that. I heard someone say that. So what? You need to be confident. If you're going to try and go in there and you're going to try and win an event like that, you have to believe in yourself. And they knew that they could have won. And the fact is, they could have won. We won by 0.06. I wouldn't have been surprised to hear us be announced as a tie. We need to get off of social media and stop being critical of individual athletes or individual programs, reading into all their behaviors. Like, let's not read into things that don't exist. Bad sportsmanship, generally speaking, is obvious, in my opinion. Really bad sportsmanship, right? And I view it ironic that people are like, oh, they were such poor sports. Well, you're not really doing anything positive here in this situation either. Like, be the example you want to see in the world. Our industry needs to change. These kids need to not feel like they're constantly being evaluated, not only for how they react in the moment in a routine, but how they react after the routine, how they respond to an award. I mean, every single thing. There are things that are bad sportsmanship: taunting, booing, yelling, those kind of things those are truly bad sportsmanship. Let's not make a human reaction be bad sportsmanship. Because on the flip side, you guys, if you're listening to this, you absolutely could say I was a bad sport on the flip side. Because when they announced our competitor's name, it's on video, I screamed, oh my God, let's go, or something like that. I was like, we did it. And I was loud. I was celebrating before they said our name, which many people have said over the years is bad sportsmanship. And my kids were like, they reacted. They were hugging each other. They were freaking out. They didn't jump up and celebrate, but they were freaking out. And some people would say, well, that's bad sportsmanship. I will tell you that I don't think I'm a bad sport. I want nothing but the best for all of the athletes in this division. But that was a purely emotional reaction. Like, I wasn't making a rational decision. That was 7 years of disappointment being realized as a goal, and me just responding as a human being, having real, honest to goodness emotions, which I know some people don't believe I have. So I was just responding. And you could say I was a bad sport, but I was just being a human. Conversely, their athletes were being human. They were surprised. They were disappointed. It's okay. Like, that is not bad sportsmanship. And I think we as gym owners and we as coaches and we as athletes and parents, we need to demonstrate those things for our kiddos. And you know what? If you think someone was a bad sport, it doesn't mean you need to comment on TikTok or on Instagram or Facebook, so-and-so was a really bad sport. All that's doing is tearing people down. If you want to have a conversation with your family about it or your gym owner, have those conversations, go gym owner to gym owner. Hey, your kids did this thing. It comes across really poorly. And then let that person address it, because that's going to do far more than trying to pick fights on social media. I've had so many thoughts about winning and what it means and what changes and what's different. And the reality is that it's just another competition. And it concerns me because now I find myself in a very dangerous position, because now there's an expectation of like, well, now you're the reigning champion. You got to go back and win. And that puts a whole nother level of pressure. And then there's athletes, like you got to manage. There's a whole different bit of management now that we're back. The kids who made it, who won, making sure they don't act entitled. They know that they still have to work hard. They know that like, hey, guess what? That season's over and now it restarts. We had a lot of meetings and a lot of conversations as coaches on how it is we move forward and make sure that that's not happening. So you can expect there's going to be some episodes that I'm going to be talking over the next year about what it is we're doing to keep our athletes hungry and humble and pushing and progressing and not sitting back and resting on the, well, we were good last year thing. Cause like, that was last year. That's now over. Ultimately, I think the last thing I want to say is what makes wins like this so much cooler, so much more amazing, is when you actually believe in the humans, the kids, the coaches, the parents deserving it. Now, I haven't been in this position very much, but like, I love these kiddos. And not that I don't love my other teams, but like, I feel like they deserved it. It's not like we got there, we got lucky, or it's one of those wins that just feels right. They worked hard, they bought in, they did the thing, they got their teeth kicked in a couple times this season. Like we had some raw goes at competitions, not because we didn't do a good job, but because we got kind of some scores that I didn't think were super fair. And we had to go up against D1 teams a couple different times and it didn't work out in our success. We ended up not winning those events and we felt, we ended up on panels where we were on D1 panels and other people were on D2 panels who scored a lot higher. And there were like things that happened that made our team feel like they got kind of a raw deal. I'm not here to complain about that, but like all of those things were a part of this journey. And so to get these kids who basically got third place, second place, third place, I think is what it was at their last three events, that when they were trying to go undefeated to then go and be able to win was amazing. The only other thing I want to mention after I'm coming back from Summit, and this is my encouragement, it's also my thanks. I need to thank a lot of people for this. These wins are not small, and it's not just me. It's, I have co-coaches. I have, my friend, Brittany Hecker from Connect, who calls me every time Vanity's going to go or sends me a message like, deep breath, you got it. Waking up early to watch, always supporting, even though she's not at our gym. She coaches at Connect. We actually coach teams that compete against each other for World's Bids, but she's always been supportive of me. Same with her best friend, Courtney, who I had the lovely opportunity to be the officiant at her wedding. I almost said opportunity to marry, but I didn't actually marry her, right? I helped her get married. But like those two people, my friends, everyone who reached out after we won and congratulated me from everywhere, like even some of you listening to this, like all of those messages meant so much. And I really tried to respond to Facebook messages and things like that. But, my wife, who's been with me through all of the ups and downs, she called me crying, my co-coaches, and then my friends, my gym owner friends, Hallie Newton from Hero, Christina Archer from Northwest Silver Stars, Kristen Jones from Elevation Athletics. Like those three people who are just other gym owners. We compete against each other throughout the year. In fact, Hallie and Christina both had level 4 teams that Vanity competed against during the season, even though they were small. All three of them were there for us at finals. Like all three of them came to finals. Hallie didn't even have teams in finals, and she came to watch and support, and she came to awards, and Christina came sprinting over after awards to hug me. I'm actually getting kind of emotional, like thinking about how amazing people like that in this industry are, and how amazing it was to get to sit there up front when Christina's team was competing in finals, and they were sitting in first place. They ended up getting second, but competing in finals in the small senior 4 division, and all three of us being there and, praying together and cheering on each other's kids. Like, that is what this industry can be. you guys. Like, we can have that as an industry. It doesn't have to be adversarial competition, even when you're relatively close in proximity to one another. Now, you could say, well, I don't lose athletes to those different programs. You're right. We don't lose athletes to one another, but it doesn't have to be that. And I know so many gym owners. I'm fortunate enough through Next Gen to get to meet so many of you, work with so many of you, and dream camps to get to be a positive impact in your gyms, that I know how many great people are out there. And the amount of times that I've had gym owners be like, oh, well, that person's, they're so mean or they're such a jerk. And I'm like, I don't think you know them, because they're actually just really kind and they're really caring individuals. We can do that. And so to all of the people who've been caring and loving and supportive throughout, like, thank you for that. Let's spread more happiness and joy and support of one another, because that's what's going to actually grow the sport versus only being adversarial, not talking to one another and tearing each other down. It's a small community. It's a small world. And being a gym owner and a cheer coach can be very lonely. And trust me, it feels a lot better when you have a whole bunch of friends who are rooting for you. So I just have to thank those people, everyone who's been a part of the journey. It's really amazing. I know this is turning into just a me story, but I did want to give you guys some lessons learned. I hope you all are doing great. I hope you're gearing up for tryouts. You hear my voice is a little bit raspy from the long weekend. I think I'm probably getting sick because I'm not sleeping a whole lot. We're moving into our new facility. Things are crazy, but I appreciate all of you taking the time to listen. And with that, we will catch you on the next episode.